to you live from Waikanae Beach in New Zealand. Hope you're all having a super fantastic sparkling day. Excuse me. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2505. It really is 2505. When I was updating the YouTube channel yesterday and putting the lives into the playlists and stuff, I realized that I had missed a number back in 2400 and I think it was like 96 or something like that. So I've had to go through and renumber everything again, which means the episode that says happy 2500th episode, it wasn't. It was 2499. So I apologize for that. But today is definitely 2505. I have verified it with the calendar date calculator and corrected everything. So today we are talking, and see, even genealogists make mistakes in something as simple as numbering a podcast. So, excuse me. Okay. So today we are talking about city directories that can fill the gaps between census years. In the United States, their census was done on any year ending in 0. There were some states, I know New York was definitely one, and I can't remember the other ones. I think it was either Kentucky or Kansas. Don't quote me on that. That would do them on the years ending in 5. They were a state census done on the year ending in 5. The US federal was done on the year ending in 0, and the state and some states did theirs on the year ending in 5. But in between those times, we had city directories, and city directories were very good sources of information. A census report takes a snapshot. A city directory shows what happened in between. And so different years you can have small details and big discoveries. You can find out, what can you find out in a city directory? You can find out the address, the occupation, or the business changes over time, clues between the census years, the names, who their spouse was, because some of them will turn around and say, John Smith, and then in parentheses will put the wife's name, and then it will have their address, and then it will have their his occupation. So it can help you fill those pieces in. Census records are incredibly valuable in genealogy research, but they only capture families at specific moments in time, and that leaves gaps. So that's your census. Sorry, your census. Did I say census or directory? Census records. Yeah, so they capture a moment in time. Sometimes important life changes happen between those census years. If you've been following me for a while, there's the story of one of the clients where I was looking for information on, we knew that they got married after a federal census, but they were divorced before the next federal census, that 10 years in between. They were also in New York, which meant that there was a census on the 5, and we captured them on that once. All the other times we had to look at city directories to find out where everybody was. And sometimes important life changes happen between those census years. We got a rough estimate of when they separated because of where they were then living through the city directories. That's when the city directory become incredibly helpful and useful. City directories can help researchers track ancestors year by year, because sometimes they come out yearly, sometimes they come out every other year, revealing addresses, occupation, business, marital status changes were in there as well. And there was always the male that was listed unless the woman was living by herself. And if the woman was living by herself, if she was a widow, it would have her name, like the last name would be there, and then it would have her first name, and then in parentheses it would put widow of, and the name of her dead husband, and then it would have the address listed, and then it would have what her occupation was. Sometimes it would list household members that were living there as well, and you could often find those because they were all living at the same address. We found a whole clan. There was a trucking company. Excuse me. So the trucking company was listed as the business for that address, but then underneath it was listed who lived at that address. And there was it was like a family compound living there. There was like multiple generations. There was the grandparents, the parents, and their children living there. And the children weren't listed because of their ages, but once they hit the age of 18, they started getting listed. And so you can even find out if people move within a city. If they move from one address to another address, you can find them that way. Death or disappearances from records. Are they in the directory anymore? Are they not in the directory? Are they now listed as a widow of, in the name of the widow? They can help answer questions like, when did the family move? When did a spouse disappear from records? When did someone change occupations? Was an ancestor still living in the area between census years? So it can help us answer these questions and help fill in these gaps in the stories. So never overlook city directories. Now, a thing about city directories, when they first came out, they came out with the street. They were listed by street, and then in the street, it was listed by house number. I know. And then next to the house number, it would have who was living there. So if you knew the address of the family that was going to be there, then that's okay. If you're looking up at the records online, those records that have been scanned in and are searchable, you will find them that way. And they may even put like a little yellow highlight. Here's your person, this little yellow highlight here. So you blow it up to have a look. And that can be helpful as well. If they are not searchable, you're looking through images. But if the images are searchable, it makes it so much easier. Sometimes a person who seems to vanish from genealogy records can still be found listed in city directories. This has happened numerous times. These records often provide the small details that help bridge larger gaps in your family timeline. So if you got a census in, say, 1920 and another one in 1930, and what happened in between, if they were in New York, there would be a census in 1925. And you can have a look at those as well. But what happened on those years between 1920 and 1925 and 1925 and 1930? What happened in those years? This is where the city directories can come in. These records often provide small, that's what I just said that, but genealogy is rarely solved through one single record. It takes multiple records to create the story. You've got to have those different points of view, those different records. Some of them will be like the primary document that you can look at and that you can read and go, yes, that's when they were born, that's when they died, that's when they got married, as long as it's the marriage certificate and not the marriage license. The license is permission for them to get married. And I actually found one today. What was the one I was looking at today? It had something on the license that I had not seen before. It had a doctor's report. It had, the doctor, that's what it was. It was a license. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. I was only looking at it this morning as well. But on the marriage, it was a marriage license and it had been typed up. So at some point, the hand transcript one had been typed up and had all been placed into a book. But what was interesting was that the marriage license actually had an area for the doctor where the doctor had filled in that the groom was free of venereal diseases. And I was like, isn't that interesting? And this was from like the 1920s, 1930s? No, 1920s, I think it was. Jeepers, I was just looking at it this morning. There's been a lot of stuff going on this morning. It was like the 1920s, in the 1920s when this couple got married, and it was a marriage license. But at the bottom was the marriage certificate. So they had to fill in all the top piece, and that was their license and permission to get married. And they had to present that to whoever was marrying them, whoever the officiant was. And then once they were finished with the marriage ceremony, then everything else at the bottom portion got filled in and was taken back to the clerk's office where it was then filed. But they had to have that licensing piece on top to verify that, yes, these are the people that are getting married. This is who they're getting married to. Yes, they've had the doctor's clearance to get married. It was just very interesting. It had a lot of information on which I was like, this is really cool. What state are we in again? I think it was Alabama. I want to say it was Alabama I was in. Pretty sure it was Alabama. I have to go back and see if I can find it because it was just a really cool marriage record. So make sure that if it is a license, if there is a portion on the bottom for the marriage certificate and has the marriage certificate been filled in, you need to check that as well, because a marriage license date is not a marriage date. The wedding date is completely different. That's when they were given permission to get married. Now they have X number of days, weeks, months, whatever it is, once the license has been issued to actually get married. So just keep an eye out for those sorts of things too. It is usually so, we usually solve genealogy puzzles by combining many small clues together over time. This is why yesterday we were talking about having the spreadsheets next to each other, or the spreadsheet with the people next to each other, so you could see, does the information all marry up? Are they the same person? Are they two completely different people? If they're different people, which information belongs to which one? And city directories are often the most overlooked clues of all. There is a ton of information that is held in city directories that you can find out. And like I said, it helps fill in those gaps, which we were able to do with the couple that got married between census years. I think it was like they got married in 1921. And by the time we got to 1930, they were separate. They were divorced. And the 1925, on the 1925 New York State Census, we found them. That's the only time they appeared on a census report together, and by which stage they'd had a child as well. So that child was recorded in there in the 1925 census. But in between those dates, we had to go through the city directories and find them that way. And that's how we found out roughly when they separated, because she had returned to her mother's home, he had returned to his mother's home, and they were no longer living together. I want to say it had something in the... No, I'd have to go back and have a look at the image to see what was actually in there. But it's very interesting what information you can glean from a city directory. So do not overlook city directories. If you're doing a search and there's a hint that comes up and says in a city directory, go look. You never know what you're going to find in there. And always look at the whole street. If it's in street, if it's by street and then by number. I don't know at what point they started alphabetizing the last names, but in some of the ones I look at, you've got the street name and then it has in numeric order for the street. Look at who's living next door, who else is living on that same street, who lives across the road from them. Have a look at the other names on there, because you might find a family living in the same street or within a block of each other. So have a look at the other streets that are around there. Pull up a map if you need to. You know, if it's like the directories from 1921, see if you can pull up a map of that particular city in 1921 and then find the street on there. And then from there, you can then move around and see what other streets are around that area and who else are living in those streets. Are there anybody else by the same family name, by the wife's name? You know, who else is in there? So go out, have a look, have fun. So your task for today is see what information pick one ancestor and go and find them in the city directory and see what information you can find out about them in the city directory. And that's it from us for today. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will be back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konara.